Hi, I'm Joanne and welcome to the Animal Communication Business Series. 8 episodes, 8 shifts, and the real journey from practitioner to business owner. If you are new here, this series is for professional animal communicators who are already doing the work. You have clients, you charge for sessions, you're visible, but you want your practice to be sustainable, intentional, and profitable. In episode 1, we asked, am I willing to treat this like a business? In episode 2, we explored why that question can feel uncomfortable and unpacked the beliefs that make words like business, money, and selling feel loaded. But today we move into action because once you are willing to treat it like a business and once you've examined the beliefs underneath it, what actually changes? What shifts in your calendar, your offers, your visibility, and the way you make decisions? This episode is about crossing the threshold. The moment you stop being someone who does animal communication and start becoming a business owner. As always, I'm joined by business architect Bex McNeil. And today we're looking at what this shift actually looks like in practice. So, Bex, when someone crosses that line from practitioner to business owner, what do you think changes first?
I think initially it's kind of about time, and you realize that you've got to be a lot more intentional with your time, making sure that you're doing all of the things that it takes in order to actually keep your business running rather than just reacting to when somebody wants you to do something. So, yeah, I think it's more to do with that being intentional rather than reactive. I think we touched on that slightly before, but making sure that you've got an idea of what it is that you're offering as opposed to just doing things because somebody's asked you to do it. And looking at the products or services or offerings that are going to give you the lifestyle that you need because all work and no play, right, makes us a very dull individuals. So
And a sad one.
yeah, yeah. Although some people love it, don't they? Some people really love what they do and so therefore they could be doing it all hours and still not be making any money. If you're in it and you're doing it because you want to make a profit, like we were saying last week, it's going, right, well, what can I do to get me where I want to be? So if it's £3,000 a month that you want to earn, what are the products and services that are going to get you there as easily as possible and also provide the solution that your people want? Um, so what was it for you that sort of shifted when you sort of moved into being more sort of business owner and treating it more like a business than a something that you were doing on the side?
Well, you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned the word calendar and you mentioned the word offer. So those things bring back some memories. I think the calendar thing is a real shift because I don't know whether it's just animal communication, but when I think about my other holistic businesses before came to animal communication, very much you were waiting for your client to phone you to make an appointment and you usually have your diary in front of you and then you would make that appointment together. And then you would look at your calendar from week to week, look ahead from month to month. And I've just transferred that into animal communication because almost like that's how you make bookings. But then what I realized was there were times when I was just wanting to go out or have a day out or something, and then a call would come through. And the thing about social media as well is people access you literally 24/7.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be offering a service to people around the world as well, because it's online, then it can be at all different hours of the day. So there was this reactive need to answer them straight away and make a booking, and then feeling obligated that they will say, oh, can you make such and such a date? And then you're going, yeah, of course, because it's almost like you've got to serve the customer.
Yeah.
So it took me, I would say, about 3 years before I, and it was as if I felt like I wasn't being a good I wasn't being a good professional in terms of I wasn't helping my clients by letting them know that I was either available or unavailable. So it's almost saying that I wasn't unavailable
Mm,
felt like I wasn't there to help them. And also the nature of the work, because people usually call and they're in distress or they want to do it now. So I was
yeah,
very reactive. So it took me, like I say, 3 years before I set up a system where you have a calendar link
yeah.
and I would block out the dates that I didn't want to work.
Mhm,
Um, and what that did in a way, which I didn't know was gonna happen, but was such a benefit, was that now when I get emergency calls, when I talk about emergency, often they're to do with people, they could be at the vets or just come back from the vets and there's been a diagnosis, a terminal diagnosis, then they have to think about euthanasia. So they need to get in touch with you now. But
yeah.
because I have blocked these times out, I can be much more strategic. So I am actually making space for
Mhm.
these types of services. That has been a huge thing. So now if somebody rings up and or messages me and say, I want to make an appointment, the simplicity of sending them a link.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's like huge. And then also it's easier for them to
yeah,
check because you imagine that, oh, I'm not being personable here. I'm not giving them the one-to-one service. But actually, it's so much better for them, for clients, to have time to book in when they are free. So that's worked beautifully.
yeah.
Uh,
I think that kind of efficiency thing, you have to be bumbling along a little bit, I think, first of all,
hmm,
to work out where those bottlenecks are, where things could be automated, or where you could set systems in place or processes in place that are going to make your life easier. But also, it takes that client experience to another level, right? Because backwards and forwards via email, trying to find a time that fits you both is not a great experience. Whereas if they can just click through, see the thing, book the thing, pay for the thing, everybody knows where they stand and it's done and dusted and it's nice and, nice and clearly defined. So yeah, I think you've got to experience a bit of it first and work out where those pain points are and what you don't want to do and what you do want to do before you can then start really bedding in some of those foundational pieces, and working out what it is that you want to do. It's interesting that you were saying about like that, the kind of the energetic thing and what you wanted to do and the time zones and this, that, and the other. Because I was very conscious when I started my business, I was like, I'm not working with anybody outside of the UK or within an hour of where our time zones are, because I had small children and my evenings were absolutely ridiculous, right? I had a window of opportunity in the school day where I could do the kind of face to face work online. And that was uninterrupted because I didn't have anybody here. Once that hit the evening, it was busy with clubs and dinner and getting ready for school and homework and all that stuff. So it just didn't work for me. So I think it was in our opening episode I spoke about terms. It's really important to get that clear when you first start. So T is the time that you want to spend, E is when you can do that, E is the energetics, R is the relationships for the people that you want to work with. Where are we? Not very good at spelling off the top of my head. Is then the monetary value that you want to earn. What do you need to earn? What do you want to earn? Because they're two very different things. And then S, your situation. How does that fit into what you're building? So that when you know what you need and what you want, you can more easily build that is effectively. You're not bumbling around creating stuff that you've then got to undo at a later stage. So clearly putting those sort of structures in place has given you a bit of freedom and a bit more kind of control and organization in what you're doing. Was that kind of why you did it in the first place, or did you just do it because it was driving you mad that that wasn't something that was an easy thing to do? Or
it was more to do with the toing and froing.
yeah,
Like what time and when, and then also that gap between, you can send, let's say, 3 dates and times, and then you have a gap of, say, some people don't get back to you
yeah,
immediately. Sometimes they don't even get back to you for a week, and then you think, "Do I keep those days? Do I not?" So it took up so much headspace.
Yeah.
And I think we can kind of touch on that within one of our episodes where we talk maybe more about setting up systems, is really to do with the headspace, and systems really come in to clear that. So yeah, I did that because it got to a point where I was thinking, this is too much. Like, I'm super efficient. I would get back to someone straight away. I would give them the date straight away. And then it's the not knowing whether they, and then when by the time they come back, you might have wanted to use that date for somebody else.
But it makes you look a lot more professional too, right? If somebody comes in and you're controlling that situation, they're like, I feel looked after and I feel held and I feel like I'm actually gonna get something out of this. Whereas if you're constantly backwards and forwards with somebody, that
Mm.
doesn't feel like that person's necessarily in control. Um, and I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. And especially perhaps like you were saying in that those moments of crisis, they want somebody that's gonna come and kind of guide them and help them and show them what's happening. Definitely from my perspective, that's the case, is that people come in and go, "Oh, this isn't working," or "This is a problem," or, they've got all these open loops and they've got all these worries and concerns and things. And part of my job then is to minimize all of that. And I think even you said in one of our conversations backwards and forwards a while back in WhatsApp, it's like, you've just dissolved all my panic. And so that's part of my job, is to go, it's okay, this is fine, that's not a big deal. Like, it's all sortable. So again, I think if you've got those systems in place, if you are acting and presenting yourself properly, then people are going to have more trust and more faith that you're going to be able to deliver the results that you say that you can deliver, right?
But that's what we're talking about. And logically, we know that that's the
Mm.
right way to do it. So it's a little bit like you kind of said, oh, yes, maybe we need a little bit of time, maybe at the beginning to bumble along before we can feel like we can now start putting systems in place. But I do wonder whether, if I had my time back, if I look back 10 years ago, what would I do? And I would actually categorically say, I would have set up a calendar link from day one.
Yeah.
But you see, because of the layers, this thing about coming across really professional, organized, somehow there's this feeling around this work that we do as animal communicators. We almost feel like we have to be so available. And perhaps again, there's this mindset around, and this is again, it's like what we're talking about, like, just to use the word business. Some animal communicators and myself in the past would have felt that I wouldn't want to say that I'm a business owner, because that doesn't sound very caring.
Mm.
And so when somebody DMs you and wants to make an appointment, it's almost as if the way to do it is to do it just, without a link, without a computer. So there's something there. So
Mm.
just tap that in, because there's people are listening to us. I think we're saying lots of things that are sensible. We're saying lots of things that they would go, yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. And then it's like, why do they not follow it with the action? I've had mentees, professional animal communicators, where I have said to them, you need a calendar link. And the process for them to actually start to operate that, I see fear. And it's like, what's that fear about? I mean, I can relate to that. So that fear is so much about not wanting to be seen as helpful, personable. It's very clinical. But yet, every time we've done the link, the relief
Yeah.
of that communicator. So it's almost like you have to just do it and test it. But there's that funny, weird, energetic barrier that comes
It's
with
that
it.
meaning, isn't it, that we put onto things that
Mm.
isn't necessarily the truth. I mean, these days, you go and make an appointment at the hospital, you've got to go through a process to make that happen. If you want to go and have your teeth sorted, you have to, any of the caring professions and the well-being professions, you have to book an appointment. It's not
Mm.
something that isn't, you're not asking people to do something that they're not doing elsewhere in their lives. And I also think that if somebody is constantly available, to me, that also kind of conveys a bit of a message in terms of, well, if they're always available, then they're not booked up necessarily. So sometimes having that calendar that's showing that you're not available immediately, actually shows that there are other people working with you and that you've got things that you're working on and, you're not constantly available. So I think that has an opportunity to elevate you, like, out of just doing this on the side and make it a proper thing so that people are not kind of just going, "Oh, yeah, she's available whenever, whatever," and constantly bombarding you. Because, again, what you guys are doing is so energetically led. You've got to be guarding your energy and
Mm.
making sure that you have those boundaries in place and having that line between people and your personal life is important, but that doesn't mean that you don't care. Doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you're not good at what you do.
It goes back again to how you set it up, how you start. And so if you have a business mentor or a business architect like yourself, you almost like talk people off the ledge, don't you? I mean,
Yeah,
you're there. So when they're saying, "Oh, no, no, I don't really want to do a calendar link because it feels as if, I don't care and the person wants to deal with it there and then." And in fact, they were in so much stress. They want it today or they want it tonight, even though it's 8 o'clock at night and, I don't really have the time. So they need someone like you because, like you say, it can be logical and it's like we can make a list of all the things we know we should do,
yeah,
one column, and then the other column's like what you actually do is like empty. So I think the more I'm chatting with you about animal communicators shifting their mindset to, really, I'm going to use the word embrace rather than just view, embrace that they are business owners. You do need a coach, a mentor, an architect, a community of others who are on the same path. Because otherwise, you get to the point where you also stress yourself out with all the things you know you should do that you don't do, and you don't kind of understand why you don't do it because not often we go into the psychology of it.
yeah,
So, yeah, so I think when we talk about calendaring, it's like such a simple thing. So if that's the case, why isn't everyone doing it? Because not everyone does it.
yeah,
But yeah, so that's definitely. Now you mentioned about offers as well. Now this one I find absolutely fascinating with kind of being able to have hindsight in animal communication. So many of us will come out of animal communication courses, certifications. There are lots of certifications that actually train people to the level where they can be practitioners and go out and charge, etc. And then there are those who are self-taught and then it's through experience that they set up a business. But what we all do, all our websites, and maybe things are changing a little bit nowadays, but if you go to any animal communicator's website, all of them say, "We offer animal communication." Like, that's the offer.
yeah,
And that makes perfect sense. That's what we do. We learn to communicate with animals. We're animal communicators. So therefore, we offer animal communication work. Actually, I discovered animal communication is just like one umbrella term. So what is an offer? Because if you say to somebody, "Oh, I offer animal communication to your dog," and then somebody will come along and say, "Oh, that's not what I got from that animal communicator. Why does she say it this way and then you say it this way?" And then that animal communicator talks about soul reincarnation. You're saying you don't do reincarnation. That one says she only does living animals and you don't. And then you start thinking you should do everything.
mm,
That's the biggest stress with animal communicators, is that we feel we should meet every single problem, request that the potential inquirer brings to your door. So it can be missing animals, it could be end of life, it can be behavioral, it can be health. And it doesn't work that way. If you truly, 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 to me, want to excel and
mhm,
also come from a place of continued passion. So when I started to look at the terminology, what do you want to offer? Not what somebody wants you to solve for them.
yeah,
Like, they don't always marry up. Like, I discovered my absolute passion laid in end of life and supporting people through those kind of decisions. Other mentees and other colleagues, some of them absolutely love talking about behavior, they actually have a background in training. And then some people really love health because they were a vet nurse. So we start to see these specialties. So when I first started to introduce the word niche to my mentees, it was like, well, I can even just choose which animal. Because again, it's almost looking like, how can you as an animal communicator only want to work with dogs or only want to work with horses? But you can. It doesn't mean you don't communicate with all animals. It's just that in business, your heart may want to focus on horses because that's your biggest love. That could be your biggest expertise, in terms of horse care, etc. Yeah, that's another big difference. It's almost like now I attract because I'm the one that say this is what I offer.
Yeah.
I can now attract people who want that and know that I've actually got more expertise or more information, knowledge, experience in that. Yeah,
Yeah. So
agree.
the difference between being a generalist and a specialist, right? If I've got something wrong with me, I go and see the GP first, and they go and make that diagnosis and send me to a specialist because a GP has lots of information about lots of things. Whereas a specialist, if I've got something that I really need sorting out, I want to see the specialist, right? And they become those known people, the expert, the go to for whatever that is. And my kids are at this stage at the moment. They're both sort of starting out and trying to work out what they're doing. So my son in particular is going into football coaching. But there's even so many different types of football coaching, right? And he's now having to go out and try different things. So he's working at after school clubs, he's working with actual football clubs, he's going to go and work with older academies and work out where his enjoyment and his fulfillment lies because it doesn't just necessarily mean that because you are a coach, you do all of these things, or because you're a communicator, you do all of these things. And when we talk about niching, I always get pushback over niching. And this is a lack mentality, not necessarily consciously. Underneath, somebody will say to me, I do such and such, and their audience is so wide because they can help anybody. But when that comes down to being conveyed in their marketing, by talking to everybody, you actually talk to nobody. It doesn't resonate because you're trying to be all things to all people. So the process of niching doesn't reduce your market and your opportunities, it actually increases them, which is counterintuitive. Most people think that by niching, they're getting a smaller and smaller and smaller part of that big pie. When in actual fact, they just become much more known for a particular thing. And therefore, like you've just said, you attract people because they know that you are the lady to go to for that. As opposed to you having to go out to the market and shout to everybody that I do this, I do this, I do this, hoping that somebody is listening at the right time. Actually, you will end up having more business come to you as opposed to you going out looking for it. Most people think when it comes down to sort of visibility and things like that, that they need to be everywhere, saying all the things to everybody all of the time. And that's exhausting, right? So that's another part of this intentional process is going, well, who am I? Who am I talking to? How do I work with them? Because otherwise you try and do all of those things and you just end up burning out, right? Because you haven't got some kind of design or some framework that you're building from. You can't be everywhere all of the time and not end up in a
Mhm.
pickle at some point. Um, so was it a conscious decision? I know the answer to this one. It wasn't a conscious decision for you to go down that line because I remember having a conversation with you at
Yeah.
one point where I was like, I think you should be doing this. And you were like, oh, I'm not sure. Um, and so sometimes our niche finds us rather than us going out and trying to
Yes, that's
find
true.
it. So by all means, to start with, do lots of things, talk to lots of people, work in lots of different scenarios. to find the thing that you love doing the most. So for me, I always say, I'm an architect and engineer. I can plan the thing, do the strategy, do all the thinking and the strategic part at the top, but I can also do the build. Now, my genius is in the architecture. My brilliance is in the build. And there's a subtle difference between the two. It's like I can do this build and I can do all the things because I've done it 100 times over. I can do it, but does it bring me joy? Not as much as doing the figuring it all out, plotting it all out, seeing how it all works, joining the dots. So it's not until you have that experience that you can kind of go, ah, this is where I'm headed. Um, but if you've got the right foundations in your business in the first place, you can evolve into that. It's not like you have to decide today that this is what I'm doing and that's the only trajectory that I'm going in. It's a case of, right, well, this is where I am now. This is where I'm going in the next 6 to 12 months. And hopefully that's going to lend me over here at some point. But that route doesn't have to be linear. You can go in all sorts of different directions. So, how does it feel for you now that you're starting to recognize that that's a niche and a specialist area that you have some genius in?
I think a couple of times it helped me to just remember that the stuff we're talking about today is kind of what we know where we are today. If we look at who we were 10 years ago, those are very likely the sort of people I want to reach through this series so that they'll be listening kind of from where they are now, which is where I was. So in terms of this niching thing, I see two things. One is I started like I would say the majority of animal communicators. Basically, you come from a place of you are here to help anybody and everybody because your whole point is to help all animals. And so I started that way and I was just unprepared for the type of requests and feeling that I had to help every case. And a lot of the times feeling really out of my depth. Then, if I just bring in the mentees that I help today, those professional communicators who also come from that place of, I'm here to help everybody. So when I say to them, you can niche at the very beginning, it's more like a permission thing. Like suddenly you're allowed to pick and choose, and that doesn't make you uncaring. There's like that subtle, energetic mindset that we hold. So I see the relief on their faces. I see almost the astonishment that somebody even brought this to the table. And then I've watched the way that they would initially start with, say, a niche. So could be just a species. So even the thought that they could just choose a species, I've actually felt like they're like, are they so if they choose horses, they feel like, am I betraying dogs? Am I not being caring towards cats? Though we come from that energetic mindset. But what I've been able to have the privilege of watching them do it from the very beginning is that they start off with the species, let's say, and it could be the niche too, it could be the species, and then it can be behavior. And then then it gives them almost like that solid time to focus on the visibility.
Yeah.
It's like suddenly they're not thinking, I have to be on Facebook, I have to be on TikTok, I have to be on Instagram, I have to be on LinkedIn, because it's like, where do horsey people hang out? And where do horsey people who are worried about behavior hang out? So
Yeah.
I've seen that. And then what happens as well is they don't stay in there because then the confidence grows. They have more successful outcomes from their consults. And then they'll go, yeah, I wanna extend it to horses now. Now I wanna go into wildlife. I've seen that happen. Whereas for me, I think I'm speaking to the majority who's gonna be listening, where you start off going every species. And what happened with me was I was getting more and more out of my depths when I was getting missing animal cases because they were very different. There's a very different requirement with
Mm.
that. Then I was getting behavior, but behaviors when like, nobody could get any help from any behaviorist, no. And although I knew a little bit about training, I don't know enough about training. Then there's health. And then it's like, again, I know some things about some health, but not to the point where some medical intuitives, for example, who become animal communicators, they can really do the work. So then bit by bit, I found that my skill, because again, people were bringing end of life cases to me, that I'm not faced by that. I in a circumstance where somebody's actually really at the end of their tether because they can't make a decision or they're so confused, I was like, I really love this. But at that point, I still didn't feel like I could niche because it was a permission thing
Yeah.
until I started to learn more about business. And then, I don't know when it came about to be much more, it was like niching became popular, or the
Yeah.
flavor. And also, like, now we're kind of moving away because now it's like we don't like that word niching, but I just, to me, feel like it then became a revelation. So
Mhm.
now, if we link it into visibility, end of life things needs more long form content.
Yeah.
They're not like entertaining videos, etc. So I choose Facebook, I choose Substack. So that has helped with the visibility because, again, like you've also mentioned, when I first started out and I did sign up with a coach, it was like Monday this content, Tuesday this, Wednesday, and then it was like
Oh.
spread them all out into all the platforms that you could get a handle on.
Mm.
And that was where the problem was, because I was getting inquiries that some of them,
Didn't want.
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, with animal communicators, I find that there's something about the way we feel we shouldn't be out of our depth, because the type of work that we do doesn't just come from knowledge, because the belief is that the animals will tell us. And I know that we could be kind of going to something separate here, but I just want to bring this up for animal communicators who are listening to this, who become burnout. I have got friends, I have seen animal communicators who are incredible with what they do, basically pull the plug because they get inundated with all these requests and the expectations. And I just feel like if I could have a second chance or a third chance with them, I would tell them to niche.
Yeah.
And of course, I'll send them to you to put it all in. But yeah, but just to bring it round, the niching to me helps where you decide to spend your energy and time on how to present yourself on which platform.
Yeah. And even there's another layer of permission that goes with that in terms of visibility. In fact, something that I've been working with my guys on over sort of January and February. So everybody needs to be visible, right? Everybody's like, ugh, got to do the visibility, the marketing thing, when actually I just want to be over here delivering. And we touched on that last week. But actually, the reason that they find it uncomfortable and they can't be consistent with it, because consistency, right, isn't you've got to post 5 times across 5 platforms 5 times a day. Consistency is showing up as yourself and showing up regularly enough in the places where your people hang out and being consistent in your messaging and being consistent on your approach. If somebody's changing their niche and their this, that, and the other every 5 minutes, everybody is a bit like, what are they up to now? So if you want to become known for being that particular person, then there has to be an element of consistency. But you don't have to do it the way that everybody else is doing it, right? So you don't have to be across all platforms. You don't have to do Top Tip Tuesday or Fun Friday or, these kind of prescriptive frameworks that people go, "Oh, well, I've got to do it this way," because they're not an expert in, say, social media or whatever. They feel like they have to learn from somebody who does it a certain way. But if that's not your natural tendency, you're going to find it hard to do. You're going to find it hard to sustain and therefore hard to be consistent. So you're not going to get the results. And so then you think it doesn't work. And so then we go back round again. So it's finding your natural leanings, your natural energy. So I am a natural talker, in case anybody hadn't noticed. So put me with a blank sheet of paper to write a long form piece of content. And I'm like, what? I don't know what to say, don't know, where to start because I've got too many things that I could say say it this way, do whatever. But I work best in response. So ask me a question, I'll answer. Give me a scenario, I'll be able to work it out for you. So I'm better to have conversational visibility. So this, for example, is a form of conversational visibility, things like podcasts, things like networking, things like getting involved in communities. Whereas other people who are more happy broadcasting, perhaps, then yes, social media, videos and webinars and those kind of things. So there's lots of different types of visibility and lots of different sort of strategies and tactics that you can apply. You don't have to do it one particular way. If it worked that way, like we've said before, if all we had to do was pick something up and do the thing and it worked and you got the results, we'd all be really happy, right? But we have to find our own way and we have to find the little snippets that we see other people doing and go, I like that. I'm going to try that, swipe it, adapt it, deploy it for me. Um, and find those things that suit us and finding our own rhythms as opposed to sort of routines because we feel like they're very constrictive. And I think that's why people think systems and
Mm.
software and routine and process, it all feels very restrictive when actually it's quite the opposite. When you have that rhythm, if you know what you're talking about in terms of your content and you've got your kind of areas that you talk about, that gives you free reign within that little wheelhouse to talk about all the things. Now, you say about long form content. I would also be saying to somebody that is struggling to create content, if content is their visibility strategy, that if long form content is the way that you are naturally creating, start there, repurpose. So that long form piece of content can be very easily repurposed then into an email series, can then also be broken down into short little snippets for social media for attracting attention. So there are ways and means. Again, you've got to understand where you're going, what you're trying to achieve. Then you can work out what the best route for that is. But if you're just doing stuff for the sake of doing it and thinking, oh, I've got to be doing this or I've got to be seen to be doing this, then you're never going to get the results that you want because you're just putting everything out there and hoping that something somewhere sticks.
Mm.
So, that consistency and that visibility ends up burning people out because they think it has to be done a particular way.
And also, you mentioned the word consistent. It can be like a good word and a bad word. It depends on, I would say, the strategy.
Yeah.
So we've got a few terminology here, like niching, visibility, strategy. What would you say to somebody who says, I keep hearing the word strategy. I even find myself saying, I need a strategy. What does that mean in business?
It just means you need to know what you're trying to achieve, really. So if somebody comes to me and says, I want a huge, great big membership that's low cost, high volume. The way that they go about things and whoever their audience are going to be completely different from somebody else who wants to have long term, lasting relationships on a deep versus wide perspective with their clients. So it's all very much dependent on context. So, again, like I was saying to you last week, I think it was, when we talk about these terms, I want to understand somebody's business and what they're trying to achieve. Then we can work out how we get them there because it's going to be totally different. So, when it comes to visibility, if I've got somebody who's absolutely so introverted that the thought of being on video and doing a TikTok or a piece to camera sends them into an attack of the vapors. It's absolutely pointless me expecting them to do that or suggesting that as part of their strategy to reach their audience.
Mhm.
Um, so it's really strategy is how you're going to achieve what you're trying to achieve. How do we make it happen? And then within that, like I say, there are tactics. If we say visibility, my strategy is I'm going to reach everybody who needs somebody supported at the end of life for their pets. So, okay, that's the strategy. The tactics in amongst that will depend on how you you best operate, Joanne. So I know that you're really good in conversation. I know you're really good at writing. So we take all of that into consideration and go, right, yeah, Substack is always going to be better for you. It's going to be brilliant for you to get out there in front of other people's audiences because that's a great way for people to recognize who you are and you become the expert for that. So we look at all the little things that work specifically for you in that strategy. So again, it's the terminology and the wording that people sound or think are more complicated than they're not. We often overcomplicate and over engineer things and then wonder why it doesn't work. Wherever possible, I'm a big fan of keeping everything really, really simple.
I guess strategy can mean plan.
Yeah. But you
How
can
do
say
you
plan and
plan?
people go, oh, I don't want to
Oh,
plan
yes.
because it holds me in, right? I kind of go, let's build a framework or
Yes.
let's put some kind
It's
of,
our association, isn't it? And also
yeah,
the fear of being restricted,
yeah,
the fear of being only being able to go one direction.
yeah.
I will share the strategy that's worked for me now for many years, and I so appreciate discovering it. And it's the strategy of working on a 90-day cycle.
Mhm.
Again, never knew this happened because coming from employment to being a therapist, everything's on either a 7-day cycle or a 30-day cycle. You know, you look at your calendar and you go, oh, yeah, I'm booked up this week. That's the kind of talk we have as practitioners.
Yeah,
And even with animal communicators, oh, I'm really busy this week. And then it'll be like, I've got nothing next week. Or next month is really busy, but I've got nothing this month. So what happens is that you're trying to plan at the end of the day also for your cash flow.
yeah,
So in animal communication, often when I talk to the mentees and say, what do you want to earn or what is it that you want to create income? The discussion often goes, I want something like 3 clients a day, 4 days a week. And I want consistent. I want it
yeah,
like that every week for every month, forever. Because then I'll feel like I've got a business. Then I'll feel that I've got a safe income coming in.
yeah,
And it never works like that, particularly in animal communication, because compared to practices like hypnotherapy or massage, you can depend on your client coming back every month.
yeah.
Animal communication tends to be either one-offs.
Mhm.
Or, I can retain a client, but they don't need to see me more than 4 or 5 times a year, depending on whether they bring in more animals in their lives or the animals. So to then decide you want 3 or 4 clients a day, 4 times a week, forever, I think, well, it's going to be, you're going to be exhausted, actually, I think,
Yeah,
not just in terms of the practice itself, but the visibility that you have to put into action to
yeah,
get that. So when I found out or discovered that there's this 90-day cycle that you look at over 90 days, what is the income you want to create? And then you kind of like, then in a way, work backwards and say, if I
yeah,
want to make X amount of money and I charge X amount of money for consults and I charge X amount of money for teaching, how many clients do I need? How many? And then you realize actually whether actually it's possible or not.
yeah,
Because sometimes you go, oh gosh, I don't have enough hours of the day to
yeah,
create that. Then you have, yeah. So the 90-day thing have also freed other professional communicators who I've mentored. And I just find out that I'm not the only one. Like when I say 90 days, almost like this is an alien language. And then also we still have to get our head around how do we plan like that. So when you're so close with your diary every week and then every month to then extend it to 3 months, but it works every single time.
yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the bigger picture. Um, I know some people prefer to sort of be out here macro and some people prefer to be down in micro. I feel like when you're in the weeds of it, you're kind of survival mechanism all the time because you're running, like you say, week to week, week to week. And for me, that's exhausting. I need to kind of go, right, if I need to bring in £50,000 this year, what does that actually look like in terms
Mm,
of clients and offers and my product suite? What am I offering and who's next? And knowing, so there's a thing that my I talk about all the time called the superfan cycle, and I've touched on it before. So we have to, in order to take somebody through and convert them, you have to attract them in the first place. You have to build a relationship with them so that they trust you and are ready to be buying from you. So the volume of people that you need to have coming through that cycle, you have to keep making sure that there's people coming in into your business, new people coming in all the time so that you can take them. Because some people might take a week to warm up and convert because they're ready right now. And maybe they've been referred. If somebody's completely new into your world, they might have to take a little time and a bit of experience of you before they actually warm up enough to be able to convert. So you've got to work out and look at how long roughly it takes for somebody who knows you from the very first time before they then actually buy something from you. How long typically does that process take? And generally, I would say 90 days is a great cycle to work on. The work that you are doing now will pay off in 3 months' time. So if
mm.
you're really visible out there now and you're doing podcasts and you're doing guest sessions in people's memberships and you're out networking, you're doing all that stuff, generally you're going to see a spike in the kind of offers and conversions that you get in 3 months' time. What tends to happen is people go, they do all of that outward work, it pays off, and then they stop doing it because they're busy delivering. And so they end up with this seesaw effect of they're out there generating leads, telling people that they're here and that they can work with them. Then they have to deliver, so they're not being visible. So you've got to keep an element of visibility happening. You've got to be working a little bit with the people that are then in your world to keep them warm and to keep them happy until they're ready to convert. Then you've got to deliver to those that are being deliverable at the moment and keep them moving around in that cycle. So if you've got a business built as an ecosystem, like I was saying to you before, you can see which of your products and services are the ones that are going to be sort of entry points, or which are the things that then somebody needs next, and what's the next logical sale. So you can hopefully not only retain people, but upsell them, cross sell them within the products and services that you offer, so that you are not constantly having to go out to that cold audience all the time. It means the volume of people that you've got to have coming into your business is going to be slightly less because you can increase the spend of the clients that you've already got. Now, again, sometimes it takes a little while to work out what that client life cycle looks like, what your offer ecosystem looks like, because you don't know until you try it. You've got to experience your clients and go, actually, that program that I've designed would be better if it was broken down into two sections. And I'll run this one first, and then 3 months later, they'll be ready for the second half. So there's a little bit of experimentation in there. There's a little bit of try it. And this is why you see in the online world, people kind of going, I'm running a program and it's in beta. So I'm looking for people to come and help me test it kind of thing, see how it works. Because we can have these wonderful ideas in our head, but what they
Mm.
look like in reality can be very, very different. So you've got to think about how you sustain the attraction, the relationship build, and the conversion and the delivery and keep that cycle going all the time. Because if you do one and not the other, you get a bottleneck in that process or in that cycle. So definitely looking, come back out, bigger picture, look at what you need to do, go back down in terms of the delivery and the implementation. But it's definitely easier to do the more experience that you've got. And I think sometimes, again, like you said, we're looking at this from the wisdom of having done these things. Um, but sometimes we need to learn by doing things the hard way. So I can explain to people that this is the best thing to do. This is what I would do if I was in your circumstances. It's a bit like having my kids. I can tell them what I think is the right course of action, but they don't actually understand that until they've been through it and worn the badge, got the T-shirt, and learned from actually doing. So I think it's really important that people speak to people like us and go, well, what did you think and how did that work? Knowing that they can see the path ahead of them. They're not walking it alone.
Well, I would actually say that, do trust the person that you decide to sign up with. Do follow them first, though. Follow their
Mm,
path. Find out about their story. That's really important. Not what they're just promising you that they're going to help you with, but follow their path, follow their story. And nowadays, with just the access, and this is what that
yeah.
visibility is about as well. Nowadays, it's all about that trust factor. I think we've spoken about the know, like, and trust. And yeah, of course, there's hundreds and thousands of coaches out there, say with hundreds and thousands of animal communicator. The thing to do is follow them for a while, watch how they've grown, either in their own practice or their business, see if it resonates with you. And then when you do get to the point where you're signing up, that's when you just, to me, you just got to do what they tell you to do. Of course, there's going to be resistance. I think a lot of your work, Bex, isn't just about, like you say, if it was just a matter of here's the strategy, here's the systems, off we go, that would just be super simple and you probably be twiddling your thumbs. What you're doing is you're helping that person to almost like uncover their resistance.
Hmm.
The word visibility, people immediately assume they have to be standing on a stage or be on video. But visibility can come in so many different ways that you know about that they don't know about. And so it doesn't have to be video. Visibility is through writing. It can be just through images with B-rolls, etc. So I think it is important to find a coach or an architect or business mentor that you resonate with and you trust them, and that sometimes they have to lead you where you don't know where you're going because they've been there. And that has been my experience, that I did sign up once for a 12-month program, and the entire time it was kicking and screaming for me because everything felt so opposite, but it was a
Right.
mindset thing, and it's nothing that I've ever done before, but I did it because I'd paid a lot of money for it, so it was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna, like, quit halfway." And it maybe then took me about another year to really process after I'd completed that program, and I picked from it the bits that worked and dropped
Yeah.
the bits that didn't work, because no program is ever gonna meet every single, bit that you're gonna go, "Yeah, that is
Yeah.
exactly written for me entirely." So always look at, what did you get out of it and what will you let go of it? And it's having that bigger picture, because there's so many different parts to it.
Mhm.
And I think that's what you've got to trust, somebody who's been and done it many, many times, and that who recognizes you for who you are. And I think that's the common thread that you and I have, that what we've been talking about, be it business or animal communication. I encourage and support other communicators to be themselves. Hence it's okay to niche, because niche is actually exactly as you said. Be yourself. And then your niche might change because you are evolve.
Yeah.
And you're saying business is about being yourself. Visibility is about being yourself. It doesn't mean you don't learn different skills, because that's
Mhm.
important. Is I don't stay in your little corner and go, I'll only do this bit because this is me. We don't stay the same. So I think from all the things that we've discussed today, I think it's fair to say business is not for the faint-hearted.
You've
It's,
got to be a bit stubborn, I
I
think,
think you
underneath,
do.
because you're
I
like,
think,
I'm not going to let it
yeah.
beat me.
Yeah, and then therefore that's why you need someone on your side, or you need a community or a membership. So I didn't know that when I started. I just thought that's, you started, you just get on with it and you do it. So, and that's a lot of the reasons why I wanted to do this series with you, Bex, is to say there are programs like yourself, that what you offer, and
Mhm.
memberships, and also one-to-ones with you. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we should just give ourselves a pat on the back because it's not for the faint-hearted, but passion keeps us in there. The desire to help others,
Yeah,
not to be in pain or struggle or be confused or all of that. That's what drives us. And so we also need to also have that kind of resourcefulness and that dig our heels and then go, okay, that didn't go as planned, or I just come away from a client session and they didn't seem very happy with me. And now I'm wondering if I should give them their money back. Oh, hang on a minute. Let me go and message Bex. Bex, I feel like I should give them their money back. And then you
yeah,
say to me, and then I listen to you, and you have years of experience and go, and then it's like, okay, we come up with a different way to approach the next client.
yeah,
But I'm not left with the, oh, I didn't do very well, because left with the I didn't do very well, you will carry it into your next session, to your next session, into your next session. And that's why people burn out or people go, I don't like human beings, or I don't like taking money, it's too much pressure. So it's all not the right thinking.
yeah. And that resilience and resourcefulness comes from you and comes from within. But when you're surrounded by people who get it and get you and understand it, you have that sounding board to kind of go, is it me or whatever? And they're like, no, it's definitely not you because that happened to me. And you then stop taking things so personally all the time. And we know that it's the personal level, it's the mindset stuff, it's the identity stuff that really is the hard work in all of this, because I think personally the systems and the processes can actually be done very, very simply, like we've said. So it's that kind of camaraderie, having people that are going to cheer you on when you're doing well and pick you up when you're not doing so well and tell you to go and have a nap when you're being a cranky old so and so. They're the people that help keep us going. And so those communities are very, very much worth their weight in gold, I think, personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I love being part of communities. I love running communities because the people are the interesting parts of our businesses, not the products and the processes. It's the people. That's the bit that makes the difference.
Mm. Well, thank you, Bex, for talking so much sense once again in this episode. And for the listeners, I want you to take away from today that crossing into business ownership doesn't mean becoming corporate. It means becoming intentional. It means your calendar isn't reactive. It means your visibility isn't scattered. Your decisions aren't driven by feeling comfortable. Structure isn't restriction, it's the container that protects your energy. So when you stop reinventing everything every week, something powerful happens. You get your capacity back. And so in our next episode, we take this further because once you stepped into ownership, the next question becomes, what does your business actually need to grow? We'll be talking about clear offers, positioning, and the non negotiables that create consistency, not overwhelm. So, if this episode helped you see what's possible, stay with us. You don't have to build this blindly. Your work matters and it deserves structure strong enough to hold it. I'll see you in episode 4.